got clients all over the place,
Right.
which is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you here, because there's different. While some things are the same in all places, there are also different rules in
That's true.
different places. So it would be interesting to get your perspective on that. How did you get down this path? How did you find yourself going down the HR world? Was that intentional, or did it just kind of happen?
Yeah, I don't think anyone who's in HR gets there intentionally.
That is everybody I ask tells me
Yeah.
that same thing. They're like, I did not really plan for this. It just kind of happened.
So it's an interesting story, but I, straight out of high school, I started working for an employment agency. And my job at 18 years old was to take all of their manual files and put them into a computer, and nobody knew anything about computers. And, at that point, they weren't even being taught in schools, but I knew how to do data entry, which gave me a step up in the employment, list.
Yeah.
And so I learned through that system or through that employment that what I wanted to do was be on the other side of the table, not the person selling the services, but the person that they're meeting with. And so I went to school, learned as much as I could. Still couldn't get a job in HR though, because I didn't have the experience. And I took a temp job because there was an HR manager who went out on maternity leave. I was supposed to be there for 4 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks. She never came back. They hired me. And at that point, I just bought books and, watched videos and learned as much as I could about it, and then just continued on that career.
And then ultimately, now you're helping advise
Here
companies.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've been in business for 10 years, and I left a manufacturing company. I'd been out for 10 or 11 years and started this business in California and then moved it to Georgia.
Super cool. Okay, all right. So let's take on this question, because I hear this all the time, both from listeners, clients of mine, and they'll say, "Hey, I'm in this situation, and it's really not cool. And is this like a really toxic thing that is crossing the legal line, or is it just not cool?" So help us. What are some of those criteria when you think about toxic, or you're advising clients on either side, either on the employee side that they should be thinking about, or on the employer side? What are signs of toxic?
There are so many signs. Like, how much time do we have? So I think that, a lot of times, like, we want to know in the workplace, we want to know, the fact that I hate everybody and everybody hates me and I hate getting up to go to work, is that normal? And because in some environments, it's normal. Like, they feel like it's normal because that is the environment. I think that, the first thing you have to look at in identifying a toxic environment is, what's the communication like? So, and that comes from top down. So the how management sets up communication styles, identifying a language, if you will, that everyone's speaking the same language and holding each other accountable. And that brings people together to be more on the path, the strategic path that the company is on. So where people will do whatever it takes to help the company be successful. So we don't see that. It's the breakdown is in communication, and it starts from the top.
So I'm hearing you say it's communication, and underneath that I'm hearing transparency in communication,
yes,
and also consistency in communication.
Exactly. So in terms of the transparency, I have clients, that we work with, across the country, who there's sort of an us-them mentality, and so the management team has these certain privileges, and then there's everyone else, and so this is a division. And when I coach them to, include your employees, they want to, if you tell them and share with them how the company's performing, what are the sales goals, what are the production goals, are you meeting lead times, are you getting shipments out, what's the quality? And if you share that information with your employees, you're sort of rallying the troops, and then the employees will step up and they will help. And if they know what it is that you want from them, like what the ultimate goal is, they get this feeling of, I'm part of this. I'm contributing to the success of this company. Otherwise, they're just doing a job.
So how about the idea of consistency plays into this? And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I saw a study, this was probably 6 months ago, and the study was on what's the worst kind of boss to work for. And I expected the study to say, like the super negative boss. Like if you work for her or him and they're super negative, they're like the worst. The ones that just come in yelling and screaming every day. Actually, that was number two. Number one was basically the manic boss, the one that's super inconsistent. That one day they're coming in and it's a party,
Right.
and the next day they're like, I'm firing people. Like
Yeah.
that created much more anxiety in people than the predictable mean boss.
Yeah, it's like the Jekyll Hyde,
Yeah.
kind of.
So do you see, is that part of this too, the inconsistency in communication?
Yeah, I think consistency is important because it kind of ties into, identifying expectations. And so as a parent, I know you're a parent too, as we raise our children, if we give them rules and boundaries, then they will usually try to stay within those boundaries. If we let them know, like, what's okay, what's not okay, and what are the consequences for what's not okay. Employees need those boundaries too.
Your kids usually stay in the boundaries?
Yeah, well,
I may have to-
3 out of 4 of them do. So,
I may have to work on that.
we've all got a rebellious one. So, but if you give them boundaries, this really helps. And this comes along the lines of, policies and procedures, safety manuals, employee handbooks. But it just having those things in place in writing and have employees sign them is one thing. The company has to be consistent in enforcing them.
Okay.
And so a lot of the inconsistency that you're talking about that creates a toxic workplace is like, this policy is, I have to follow it, but Joe doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, it's good for me, but it's not good for, it's good in place this week, but not next week.
Okay, so I'm hearing in this consistency and transparency in communication and action
Yes.
is really important. Okay, well, what else? What's another sign that I would say, yeah, this place is not just normal dysfunction. This is like toxic. This is not good. There's liability here.
Yeah, so I would say the third is interpersonal relationships and what those relationships look like. And when you look at when you take a job, you spend at least 8 hours a day, at work, and it might be 9 or 10 hours a day. Sometimes it might be a Saturday or a Sunday. And so these people that you work with wind up being people that you spend more time with than you do with your family.
Yeah, we spend the majority of our waking hours in our life working.
At work.
Yeah.
And so, and even when we're at home, we're emailing or texting or we're on phone calls. And even when we're on vacation, oftentimes, you might be in, at a resort in, Cancun, and you get a call from your boss, you get a call from a coworker. And so there's constant communication.
Yeah.
If those relationships are broken, that creates, that's a sign that there's a toxic environment. It also impacts productivity. That you have more workers' comp injuries, work-related injuries and illnesses. You have more absences when those relationships are not strong.
Oh, interesting. So when those relationships are broken, you'll see those other things get affected.
Right, and those are tangible things that have
workers'
a
comp
dollar
and-
value, attached to them.
Can you? This is helpful. Can you think of an example? Can you think of this? Has there been any time, a story or a client you worked with in the past, you think, of course, protecting all the innocent, and maybe the not so innocent, but what would be a good example of this?
I can actually give you a really good example. There's a manufacturing company that we worked with, excuse me, and we did some communication programs with them, and they definitely had a broken system. And during this program, we allowed some of the attendees to, talk about some of the things that were bothering them about their work relationships. And there was a woman who said she needed to talk to a man that was in her department. He happened to be in the room, so I said, speak to him. And she said, I come in the morning, we work together for 10 years. We are in the same closed room because they did quality all day, every day for 10 years. You never say hello to me. You never say good morning. You never ask me how I'm doing, what my weekend was like. And she shared with them how that made her feel. Like, it makes me feel insignificant. It makes me feel like I'm not important, that you don't like me. And this is all very personal. It didn't have anything to do with their ability to do the job together. They were effective in getting, the job description, essential functions completed. But they couldn't communicate, and they had no relationship. And so once that was sort of put out on the table and said out loud, he had no idea that she needed that. He had no idea that he just didn't even realize that he was doing that. And so that changed because he was now aware, and their relationship became stronger.
That's a great example.
In the workplace.
I can't imagine that. I can't imagine going into office, sitting next to somebody for 10 years
Yeah.
and having them not even acknowledge my presence.
Right, and when you see people who gather at the office cooler, if you will, the proverbial office cooler,
Yeah.
and they're gossiping about not just about other employees, but just sort of spreading drama, but gossiping about the company. Like, can you believe management did this? And can you? So that's another area to look at in terms of identifying, is my workplace toxic? How does the general employee population feel about management or the direction of the company and how they're being treated?
Yeah, so we've got that transparency, consistency with actions and communication. We've got interpersonal relationships, and then we've got all the general kind of, are there getting cliques formed that are
Sure.
saying, yeah, this is not cool.
Exclusion.
Exclusion,
And
feeling left out.
it's like high school,
Oh,
junior high school.
Well,
Yeah,
didn't, brings back bad memories.
exactly. Yeah. Flashback.
All of a sudden I have braces and I'm skinny and awkward. This is great.
Right.
So how about what else? Are there other signs of toxic when you go into either a client or someone comes to you and says, hey, Julie, I don't know if we got a toxic thing going on here. Can you help us?
Well, when we get called in from a client to look at, we look at tangible things. So the first thing we're looking at is turnover. What's the rate of turnover? What are the reasons why people are leaving? Are they resigning? Are they being fired? If they're being fired, why are they being fired? Is there documentation? Did the management team, are they, consistently providing employees with the tools they need to do the job, with the instructions, training, helping them be successful, as opposed to finding ways, paths out the door.
Is there a gold standard for turnover? I mean, is there like a number? I know it varies by industry, but is there a number that when you see that, you're like, ooh, that's
Yeah, well, we've seen it pretty high. We have one client, their turnover is probably over 50%. But we like to see it below 10. And, the lower the better, of course. So, I mean, sometimes turnover happens, and it's healthy turnover. It's, it might be someone leaves because their spouse moves to, Africa, and they've got to go with them. It might be some unusual situation.
Turnover is an interesting metric because I found that when it gets less than 15%, 20% around and closer to 10, this other metric pops up where there's more internal employee referrals.
Right.
They'll refer people they like to work there.
Right.
Like, this is pretty good, so you should try it here.
But if you have a toxic environment, the employees are not going to refer people to work there.
No way will they want to do that.
So,
and I've also found that if turnover gets too low, so I worked with an organization one time that had like a 99% retention, and that was actually creating issues because no one had any place to go.
Well, the other thing too is that part of turnover is healthy, and there's different reasons for turnover, and you
Yeah,
have to look at that,
totally.
not just the number of people that depart.